So we know now how to create a new user account with this method right here. And that's returning a promise, which is returning any error in this catch block right here. Now, we also said that we wanted to store other information about the user, such as the alias and the geolocation. All we're doing so far is storing the email and the password using the auth service. So what we'd like to do next is take this alias and maybe a dummy geolocation to begin with and store those in a user record to match up with this one right here. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we're going to do it after this is complete. We want to successfully sign them up first, then we want to do it. So what we can do, since this returns a promise, is tack on a .then method right here before the catch block, and this will take in a function as a parameter which will fire when this is complete. Now this function takes in the user as a parameter that has just signed up. So we have access now to the user that's just signed up. Hey gang, Sean here from the future with a quick update for those of you using Firebase version 5 at this point. This course uses Firebase version 4.12, 4.13. If you're using those versions, you can ignore this bit and just carry on as normal. If you're using version 5, then whenever you use this method right here, create user with email and password, which we just did, then you no longer get a user object back. You get a credential object back. And then you can access the user by saying cred.user like so. Okay, so it's just one tiny little extra step that you have to perform if you're using Firebase version 5. The same is true for this method right here, sign in with email and password. So whenever you see me bring back the user right here, you instead bring back a credential and then get the user by saying cred.user right here. Okay. And now what we'd like to do is create a record in our Firestore database to match up with this user. Now we already have a reference to that document right here. We said db.collection users, then get a doc with this.slug. So we already have a reference now to that record. So what we can do is we can say ref.set to set some properties to that record. Now this is different from .add when we added a new record in the past. What .add does is work directly on the collection like this, .add, right? And .set works on the document. So we've already created this reference to the document and we've set the ID of this document, whereas .add auto-generated the ID. We've already set that right here using the slug. Now we're just setting some properties inside this document, right? And it's going to save that as a record then to the database. Cool. So the first property in this document is going to be the alias. So we'll set that equal to this, the alias. Then the second property is going to be the geolocation. And to begin with, we'll just set that to null, but we'll come back to this later at some point. Then finally, I also want to associate this record with the user stored in our authentication service. So how are we going to do that? Well, on this user thing right here, this user object that we returned, we're given a user UID. So when we created that user, remember we had that property auto-generated. So what we're going to do is use this and store it inside our record for that user in the Firestore as well. Now we can access that property by saying, first of all, user_ID. That's going to be the name of our property inside this record that we give to this record. Then we want to take this user that we've just created, .uid, and it gets that randomly generated UID that was created by this method. Okay, so now that user has that UID stored on this user in this storage, and we also have that stored for the user in this document right here. Okay, so that is going to save that record to the database. Now obviously this takes some time to do as well. We can tack on a .then method right here, so we can do something after this is completed. And all we want to do is redirect them at this point. We've signed up, we've created a record in the database for them. Now we just want to redirect them to the home page. So let's pass in an arrow function right here. And inside we'll just say this dot router. Remember we use this to redirect a user. We can say dot push. And then inside an object with some options. And we want to go to the name of the route, which is gmap. Okay, remember we defined the name of that route inside the router file over here. The name is gmap, so we're going to this route. Okay, so let's save this, cross our fingers and hope that this all works. before I try anything, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to delete these users. So if I go to these three little dots over here, I can say delete account, delete. And if I go to the database now, I'm going to delete this dummy record that I created earlier as well inside the users collection. There's this record. I'm going to go over here and say delete all documents, start delete. That's absolutely fine as well. So now we have a fresh slate, a blank canvas. We can go over here and we can refresh just for good measure. Then if we enter in an email, I'll do sean@thenetninja.co.uk. I'll do test 1234 alias the net ninja, and I'm going to sign up. So let's cross our fingers here and hope that this all works. Okay, we got redirected to the homepage, which suggests to me that this all works, but let's just have a look. First of all, if I refresh here, then we should see that user record in our Firestore database. And we do have one, the net ninja. There's the alias, geolocation, and the user ID as well. So this right here should match up to what we have inside the authentication tab as well. Sean at the Net Ninja, and we have that user ID right there as well. We're signing a user up, we're getting that ID, creating a document or a record for them in our database, storing that ID in there as well so we can sync the two, we know which is which and that they belong together, and then storing additional information such as their geolocation and alias inside that record as well.